What you're seeing here is my collection of firewood, or part of it. And I want to do a review on the BAUMR Hercules HPS800 log splitter, the hydraulic one. This is the second part of my timber stack. I've got enough here for probably 3 years if we go careful with it, 2.5 if we rip through it. All of the wood that I've shown you has been split using this baby here and the wedge on the ground when needed. And I've probably had that wood splitter handle in there for, I don't know, 10-15 years or something. So the reason I got the log splitter was because the power company at the other property that I've got had to fell one of our trees. They say it was too close to the power lines and it was at risk of taking them out. So I was stuck with the log. It's around 700 millimeters in diameter, and it's black box, and it's really heavy stuff, really heavy. And the grain on it is all wavy. It's brilliant burning wood. This one happened to have a lot of knots in it as well. And I tried splitting some of it way too hard. So I ended up deciding that after 35 years of doing it all manually that I would bite the bullet, get a hydraulic log splitter. So that's what has triggered me to go and do that. And I needed to make sure that I could get one that would actually split this stuff, because as I said, it is super hard. Apologies for the wind noise, not much I can do about it. I don't have a proper camera, everything's being filmed on the phone, and I just have to live with the conditions that I've got. And up there the sun is really brutal. We get a lot of skin cancers in Australia, and that's why I'm always trying to cover up in the video that you'll see. Hang around to the end, that's where I'll do a bit of a review and a wrap up and give you some hints and tips on the splitter. And just one of the things, I start off, I'll be using the splitter in the vertical mode. That's just to break these huge pieces down into manageable bits. Then I flick to the horizontal mode, and I won't show too much of that because it's fairly straightforward, and I'm sure you've seen one log splitter splitting on the horizontal mode. You've seen them all, so it does do it, and it does it great. So yeah, without further ado, let's go and have a look. Just looking at the diameter of this stump, and as you can see, well, bark to bark is 80 centimetres, so I'd say that's about 72 centimetres of actual nasty branch knot here on the side, making it super hard to split. No hope doing it manually with wedges and a splitter, and I actually broke 2 bloody wood splitters manually trying to do it. Gave up and bought this beast. Splitting power of the bloody hydraulics is amazing. You're there for a long time trying to split this big thing. Just doing a moisture content check of the wood that I've split, and they're coming up around 24%. So that's quite damp, obviously, and you wouldn't burn it at that. We'll give it a couple of years, and I think we'll see it down around 12 or 13. Well, this is almost the finished product. Got a little gap in the wall there, which is where the last bit of a log will go. I haven't chainsawed that bit of log up yet, so I haven't split it yet, and that's a job for another weekend. And you can just see on the end there where I've kind of cross-stacked, made a bit of a pillar, and I've done it again there where you can see my gloves on the ground. That helps stabilize the wall. Because there are so many odd bits and pieces in this stack, and some of the wood is really crazy shape because of all of the limbs and the knots in the wood and the way it's split. This wall probably will fall down as the wood shrinks and the wind hits it. Very gusty winds here. Anyway, if it falls, we will rebuild it. Well, the work's all done for the weekend, so I thought I might give you guys a bit of a rundown on the machine, some hints and tips along the way as well. Just a few things on the assembly. You're going to need a mechanical aid, an engine hoist or something like that, which is what I use to put it all together, because the ram there is, and it comes connected to the big beam. It's super heavy duty, super heavy, and trying to lift it on your own's not even possible to get out of the box, so going to need someone to help you with that. The advertising for this machine from Edisons doesn't tell you, but they actually give you the hydraulic oil inside the carton. So don't rush out and buy hydraulic oil unless you particularly want your own brand or you want to have some spare oil, which is what I did, and I'll explain why in a minute. When you're putting it together, a couple of other things that I found. It is mentioned in the instructions, but the hydraulic hoses are filled with oil. And don't think like I did that you can quickly remove the blanking cap and screw it onto the connector and there'll be minimal leak. I tried twice and failed twice. So you're better off to heed the warning, dump that oil into a container and then try and connect it all up. When you're connecting it up, it mentions the O-ring as being 17mm for both connections. I found that to be incorrect. It was 17 mil on the filter there, and it's probably 15 mil, a smaller one anyway, on the pump. So keep that in mind. The other thing too with the hoses, it's advertised by Edisons as being the brand BAUMR or something like that, which I looked up. They're a Chinese brand, but what I ended up getting was this brand here, FUDE, Food. It's another Chinese brand hose. So far so good. I'm not going to complain about it because they work, and it's not like they're Dunlop hoses or something like that, which if they advertised Dunlop and I got Chinese, well, I would complain. Just for the last 3 days, breaking in the machine on some lighter stuff, and then just running the machine in the mornings or early afternoon at the latest, because it's been 30 degrees Celsius up here, super hot to be working with an air-cooled machine. The hydraulics were getting warm, and I was doing whatever I could to keep things cool, idling the machine down, letting it idle for a while before I shut it down. In between loading, I'd let it idle and just cycle the hydraulics to cool the ram and everything like that. I'd just keep an eye on it, putting my hand on the oil tank to see how hot it was getting. And if it was getting too warm, I'd just shut it down and let it rest. And organising my work that way as well, so that I wasn't just pushing the machine for hours on end without a break. When you are finished assembling it, be aware you might have some spare parts left over, which I had. I had two, I think it was M6 bolts, and I found that they actually go on the number plate support here. So if you're putting a number plate on it, for what reason I don't know, because you can't register it, but anyway, they go in there, and there was this other thing here too. No, the instructions don't tell you what the heck that's for. I'm using it to protect the hydraulic oil breather there, but it also conveniently fits over your tow ball, so it could be a tow ball protector, not too sure. So I'll give you a bit of a walk around the machine. You're starting off with the engine. It's got the BAUMR-AG sticker on it, but it's actually a Ducar or Lithan machine, and you can see from, where is it, down there, sorry about the angle, yeah, Ducar, Chinese anyway, and I'm pretty sure it's a Honda rip-off of the GX420, which they don't make anymore. The oil can be checked either side, so you've got the grey dipstick there, and around on this side you've just got a blanking cap under there, so whichever one you can swap them around however you like. This is one heck of a strong engine. I've got the same engine on the chipper, actually it's just here too, and yeah, exactly the same. I've had that chipper for a couple of years now, hasn't missed a beat, and they both behave identically. So for starting, it nearly always wants a little bit of choke, no matter how hot it is. I can start it without the choke, but you need to have full throttle, and if it doesn't start the first go, give it up, give it half choke, and off you go with an on idle as well. So that's a bit of a tip. The air filter, on the log splitter is not too bad, but on the chipper, you need to change it virtually every time you use it, because the chipper's such a dusty machine, it gets blocked pretty easy. With respect to the fuel, it says do not use fuel containing ethanol. So I've been running it in on premium 95 octane in Australia, which is different to the American system. But I have successfully run the other engine on E10. But if you're going to do that, make sure you turn the fuel off, let the engine idle down, and completely exhaust the carburetor of the fuel, because the ethanol is somewhat corrosive. It's hard on rubber, and it's corrosive on alloys as well. So I'll probably shy away from using E10
and stick to the premium. It's probably worth the extra cost. Okay, this is the ram. It's probably one of the biggest that I've seen on a hydraulic splitter, and it sure does the job. It's really strong. It moves at a decent pace with the two-stage pump. And as you can see here, the hydraulic controls are mounted directly to the ram. And the other thing to watch, I did notice with these 30-degree days that the fittings and the ram itself were getting quite warm as the day got hotter and the machine got more and more use. So there's the pump there, which is a two-stage unit. So when you push the lever forwards, the ram will move pretty quick until it hits something that's pretty solid and the pressure goes up. So if you're just cutting normal straight grain wood, it's going to be fine. It'll just steam through it quickly. Once it hits some of the stuff that I was doing, it changes gears, goes back to first gear, and you can just feel the pressure building up until whammo, it goes through it. One point of difference, and the main reason why I bought this machine, is that it comes with an oil filter for the hydraulics. And that was a big selling point for me. I know that Clicker and Big Boys Toys sell a very similar unit, and the difference was the oil filter for me, and so that's why I got this particular one. The other point of difference is that it comes with a slip-on cross wedge, and I like the idea of it being slip-on because if you hit something pretty solid and it puts pressure between the horizontal blade and the beam, I'd be concerned that there's nothing to give and it might damage the ram mountings or the I-beam itself, but given it's slip-on, it's probably just going to push the cross beam upwards harmlessly. So this is the latch or the lifting pin. That's the one that locks in for when you're using the machine vertically. It locks the beam in here. Make sure you use it, because as you will have seen, the way, well, the forces that I was generating with the huge logs, and I know I'm pushing the design limits of the machine, she's rocking and rolling around, and you don't want that left out and having the thing collapse and slam down. The other lifting pin or latch, so this is the one that you have to pull and then lift the I-beam up. I've found that putting it down, this pin is just a little bit too long. So I'm going to shorten it, or at least file a bigger chamfer on it, because I'm finding that as I lower it, I've got to pull the pin back for it to go in, so it catches on this edge here. And another tip, when you are going into the vertical position, extend the ram fully forwards. It moves the center of gravity further towards the foot of the machine, and it makes it much easier to lift. And the opposite's true when you're going to put it back to horizontal. Have the wedge fully retracted. This is the jockey wheel that you get with it, and it's got a brake there, which I found quite useful. In one unexpected way is that when you've got the lock on, it locks the steering as well, so it can't move left or right, and that's handy when you've actually got it hooked up, and it stops the jockey wheel from wobbling around as well as the wheel from turning. One other thing that I did to get it to this location, I had to tow it about 370 kilometres in a 6x4 trailer. So when I did that, I didn't want to rely on just this pin to hold it up in the trailer, so I put a couple of other bolts through here and on the other side there, just to make sure that that was attached to the drawbar nice and strong and not just relying on the pin. I also made use of the chains at the front here and crossed them over and attached them to the front of the drawbar on the 6x4 trailer, so that it wasn't going to roll backwards, and it couldn't roll forwards because the jockey wheel was wedged to the front of the trailer, and just for good measure I had some tie down straps on it too. Maybe one thing that I think they could improve a little bit is the engine mount. In operation, the engine does bounce around a little bit, and it's actually pretty close to the ground. So the ground clearance on the machine is not that great. So be mindful of that if you're towing it around the property, that you don't drive over a tree stump, that your tractor all clear, but this thing won't. Be aware of that. And the reason why I bought some spare hydraulic oil is because the suction hose, it also goes, well, I guess it's a bit higher than the engine, but it's not unforeseeable that, you know, a stick or a branch could be flung up and get caught in there and rip the hose off, and then guess what happens to all the oil in the tank. So although the wheels are pretty good and they're high pressure, they'll do for me. They're not a deal breaker, but if they were to be a couple of inches bigger in diameter, that would help. So at the back of the machine, you've got a hydraulic oil level gauge sight glass here. And as you can see, I've got it right up to the full mark. There's also attached to the bottom of the breather, there's a dipstick on the bottom of that. And when I check that, it's at halfway. So have the sight glass full, and I guess the dipstick's halfway. The more oil, the better. It'll, particularly in hot weather like this, to absorb the heat. So the more oil there is, the more heat energy it can contain without, well, and thereby, I guess, keeping the hydraulic oil temperatures down a bit. I am really impressed by the quality of the build and workmanship on the machine. Some of the welding looks like, you know, it's been hand welded. I'm okay with that. These fingers, they are super strong. I don't see how you would bend one of those unless you get a bit of wood coming backwards that's like wedge shape and it just won't release for whatever reason. So the only thing, make sure you don't have your fingers in the way when that thing's coming back, because there's no second chances. Back here, there's a bolt here that holds the wedge to the ram. I think it's a mild steel bolt, probably M12 or something. So pretty strong. I don't know what the heck the shear strength would be, but I think it's intentionally mild steel, and that would be like a fuse in case you do get something super heavy. Let's say you're splitting rocks or something crazy you're not meant to do. I think that would shear off before the machine actually had a catastrophic failure. And just with the beam, it is a welded beam, it's not cast I-beam, but they've also put some gusseting in right the length of the beam, like on a diagonal. I'm not sure if I'm really picking that up too well, but yeah, it's really looks strong, and all of the other bits on it super strong. So this is the foot of the machine, and it's, I think it's 10 centimeters 4 inches high, and it's got heaps of gusseting on it. You can see how strong and heavy duty that is. And you may have noticed when I was using it vertically, I made up another, like a platform to go around it. So this is the platform after splitting all of that wood. It's seen a bit of use and abuse. It did the job. I probably will end up making another one, and I'll make it maybe a little bit narrower height-wise, because it was a little bit too high, and that's why the machine was rocking and rolling a bit, because it had to push the log down, or therefore pulling the machine up, so that it could get enough pressure on it rather than just the weight of the machine. And that's because this platform was a little bit too high. But the platform, I just made that out of the packing crate that came with the log splitter. And it just fits around the foot surrounding it. The only thing is you can't have this tray on at the same time because there's not enough clearance there. And speaking of the tray, one thing I will be modifying is this edge here. after you split things, they can vibrate or get knocked and move, and they fall down onto the mudguard, in my case, twice. So I'm going to be putting some rails or something through here to stop that from happening. I'm even thinking of swapping it to the other side, because you've got the controls here and you're right next to that platform. I found it easier to operate it from the other side, reach across the ram to the controls, and then push the cut pieces over to the tray here. But now and then they would fall off. Talking about the strength of the machine before, this is the only thing that I've managed to damage on the whole thing, and I'll be straightening that up in a minute, so we'll sort that out. Here's a close-up of the wedge. It's actually pretty sharp, really. I haven't sharpened it, but that's how it comes from the factory, and the shape of it is quite smart. So you can see as it comes along, the point works its way into the wood, starts splitting it, and then it's slightly curved through here, and it just breaks out the wood. So all up, I've really put this thing through its paces. I haven't just picked straight grain, little tiny bits of wood. I've picked the worst, hardest bits that I could find. And the reason for that is that I've been using these wood splitters since I was in my 20s, and it's been maybe 35 years. And so I'm no stranger to using these, but when I had all of this wood here, I tried splitting it. There's no way I could just use this to split it, so I was using the wedges, which I reserve for, you know, some pretty gnarly stuff. And I did manage to split one piece out of one, and it took me about 15 minutes, and I just thought, this is ridiculous, because it wasn't even the hardest piece. So that got me thinking, and in the end, yeah, that's why I put down the 3,000 big ones to get the machine. And I should have done it years ago, really. Like the amount of... Still, if I have straight grain wood, I will just use this thing, because it's pretty quick when you know what you're doing. But if I've got a big heap of timber and it's hard, you know, got some hard stuff in it, or it's big and heavy, well, obviously now I'm just going to play it smart and use the machine. So I hope you've got something out of this. Thanks for watching, and have a great time.